Fine. It's a pleasure to make this interview with you.
Thank you.
And this is a special year for you, I know, because there is many things to promote. Like
It's been a very special year for me. I've been working as creative director for the Pink Floyd, and I've been shooting a couple of music videos for them, one in Chernobyl, in Ukraine, and one in Kazakhstan, for the new single, Louder Than Words. And I also have made the film about Monty Python, the last show they will ever do. And I have a new book out as well called Hipgnosis Portraits, so it's a special year for me.
I love Life of Brian, and I need to go to watch your documentary, your film.
The film I made for them is the last show that Monty Python ever did. It's the last 10 shows they put together. They will never work together again. And they called it One Down, Five to Go, because one of them died and there's only 5 left. So they kind of have a sick humor about themselves anyway. But this was a very interesting project and a very funny project. They're very professional people to work with. But there's always jokes non-stop all the time when you're working with them. Sometimes it's difficult to know whether they're being serious or not. But I really enjoyed it, and it's a 2-hour film, and it's fun.
Okay, we start with our answer.
Okay, with the list.
The first one about your first work, Search for Secrets. I know that it was made by taking completely different image. What is this, an Israel case, or you made some cover with using such unique technique? Can you explain the creative process?
First of all,
yes,
there's an expression in English that says, "It's who you know, not what you know." And I knew Pink Floyd. We were at school together. We shared apartments together in London. And when they started the second album they made, which was called Saucer Full of Secrets, they asked me, please, would you be interested to do the cover? Because they knew that I was working with Storm Thorgerson at the time, and we were at film school together. I was doing photography, he was doing film, so they thought we might come up with some interesting concepts. So the idea initially was related to Marvel comics, you know, the famous American Marvel comics. And with Pink Floyd starting out, we were very much into alchemical things. The alchemy seemed like a good way to go, you know, turning metal into gold. So this seemed a very good symbol for a band starting out in a spacey band like Pink Floyd. So we got a whole load of photographs that we took on a very simple old Pentax camera from magazines and old chemistry manuals, and from Marvel comics. I went into the dark room. In those days, of course, nothing was digital. It was all done with developer and chemicals and enlargers, and I simply laid a piece of photographic paper out and just made many multiple images, many times. I probably did 20 or 30 different parts. And I did it by projecting and holding my hand over this bit and that bit and only allowing so much light here, switching the light off in the dark room, putting it back on. And we found one that we really liked. But of course, the band wanted to have an image of themselves somewhere in it. So I took a photograph with infrared film, and you can see just in the center of the cover, there's an infrared picture of Pink Floyd there. But it set 2 things in motion. One, it started Hipgnosis as a company designing surreal photo designs for album covers. And 2, it was the first time Pink Floyd really had their own say in what they wanted creatively to be on an album cover, which set the process between me and them from 1967 right through to now, 2014. So it was a very important point in both our lives.
I know. There is another question. there is two versions, no, of the cover of Successful Secret. One for the English market, another for the American market. The right on top, Pink Floyd, is in the final. There is other two scene, no, Y and D. In somebody people say that like from Sid Barrett to, or it's not. It's a joke.
It's a joke.
It's a joke.
You know, many times when I do album covers, especially for bands like Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin, people read into the pictures something that's not there. They want to find something more. Sometimes there is, but 99 times out of 100 there isn't. And in this case, where the lettering was different in America to England with regards to the front cover of Sorcerer's Secrets, I can safely say it was an accident, or it wasn't by design. It was just something we did. And it has no meaning related to Sid Barrett or anybody else. It's just how it worked out. I have to also say, the way I did the lettering, in those days there was a thing called Letraset, where you used to put the piece of lettering down and you'd rub it on the back with pencil, and it would come off on the image. And that's how I did the lettering. That's how amateur we were. We had no idea what we were doing at all. So,
now with the digital, it's more simple to do something like this. For this,
is a joy. The digital world is a joy compared to how it used to be with trying to create images years ago.
Okay, our second question is what are the difference between for the love of vinyls, your previous book, and Hipgnosis Portraits?
5 years ago, Hipgnosis put out a book called For the Love of Vinyl, and this book was strictly about album covers that we designed over a period of 15 years, from 1967 to 1982. And it was absolutely about the album covers themselves and the stories within those covers. This new book, which is called Hipgnosis Portraits, is about the portraits that we took of many, many rock stars and bands during that period of time. And many of the pictures in this new book have never been seen before. I mean, there's masses of Rolling Stones photographs, Floyd photographs, that have never ever been seen. Peter Gabriel. And the reason for that is that when we did album covers, we always did a design. We never put the band on the front of the cover, very rarely. So, as part of our contract with the band, we always had to take their photograph. Now, many times that photograph never got used because we always used the surreal image for the front and something else for the back, and create exciting, interesting images that had nothing to do with the band. So I had in my possession lots of old folders, hundreds and hundreds of negatives and transparencies of rock and roll bands that were never seen, never put on the cover. And about 18 months ago, before my partner in Hipgnosis Storm died, we started to look through those folders, and I found all these extraordinary photographs of bands, people, I don't know, especially the Rolling Stones. There were 156 negatives of the Rolling Stones there that had never been published and never printed, because the job we were working on then, which was going to the suit, was cancelled. So I had this treasure trove of pictures and images to pick and choose from, and I realized there were a lot of very interesting portraits at the time. So I took them along to the publisher, and they said, "Oh, we'll have them. Fantastic." So it was like something that you find by chance. I had not even thought about it, and this has made a very interesting book, I think, because they're not album covers, they're very distinct portraits, weird, different kind of portraits. If you look at the book, it's not. There's some pictures which are very regular, and some pictures which are extremely surreal. Peter Gabriel, for example, the Belts cover where his face is all in pieces. Well, I have lots of different variations of that, things that were never seen before. So it's an interesting book, and I think culturally it represents the time. when rock and roll bands had all power and they were able to have anything they wanted at any time because they had the money. And they were more powerful than the record companies, so they were able to dictate what they wanted. And this book is representative of how they looked at the sound.
Okay.
Are these questions, are these answers too long for you?
No, no, no. We can. For me, it's a pleasure.
We've cut it. Good step, yeah?
There is some problems sometimes to hear you, but no worry. After we can write down the.
Okay. Maybe I move a bit closer. Maybe that's better.
Next time. Which is the cover made by other artists that you would like to do, and on the contrary, which one of yours you regret you have done, if there is one?
When you're a designer, I don't care if it's an architect or a painter or, you know, an illustrator. Mm-hmm. You can't always do perfect work. You do your best. And some things turn out really well and some things don't. And in Hipgnosis, we designed what we used to call turkeys. You know, turkey is a bird you eat at Christmas. And yes, a turkey is an American expression for something that's not any good. So we certainly designed some turkeys. Not everything was perfect. I mean, the album covers that everybody knows us for, like Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin Houses of the Holy, let's say, of course they worked incredibly well and they're beautiful. But there were some that were not so great. And I'm not going to say what they are because I'll only embarrass myself. But there are some things and some bands I would have liked to have worked for. For example, the Doors. I never worked for the Doors, and they always had interesting covers, and I particularly liked the album cover for Strange Days. And they were one of those bands that could have given us an opportunity to do something very interesting, I think. So I regret not working for them. I never did an album cover for The Who, although I've worked for The Who many times. I've filmed them many times and directed their live shows, but I never did an album cover. And I always would have liked to work for The Who. They're one of my most favorite bands. And again, they gave designers like Peter Blake or other designers like that the opportunity to do interesting work for them. So yes, there's some people I wanted to work for and some people that I haven't. And as I say, some images I've done which I'm not proud about.
Thank you. The next one is which is your favorite cover among all your creation?
Well, the interesting thing is that the most famous cover that Hipgnosis ever did was Dark Side of the Moon for Pink Floyd, the triangle with the prism.
With six colors. Only 6 colors, not 7.
Only 6 colors, not 7. Yeah, it looked like this, right?
Yeah.
But 6 colors, not 7 was an accident. It was not intentional. Again, you asked me if there's some meaning behind this. There wasn't. It was supposed to be 7 colors, but we forgot there were 7. We thought there were 6. So it just worked out that way. So, but I can safely say that although that is probably the most iconic cover that Hipgnosis did, it's not necessarily my favorite. My favorite cover, I would probably say, is House of the Holy by Led Zeppelin, because it was so difficult for me to do that cover and so complicated, and it wasn't the cover that I set out to do originally. If you look in the new Hipgnosis book, Hipgnosis Portraits, you'll see how the cover was supposed to look, which was a family. There was a man all dressed in silver with a bald head, and another man and a woman, and they were all naked. And then there were 2 children on the rocks running up in the picture. Now, House of the Holy doesn't look like that, and the reason it doesn't look like that was because it was so cold and raining. When I did this photograph, I had to cancel it in color and shoot it all in black and white and collage it all together. Then I had to have it all hand tinted to bring it back to color again. And that, I think, is just because of the process and because of my relationship with Led Zeppelin, which I enjoyed a lot. I think it was probably my most favorite picture of all that Hipgnosis did.
Okay. Eric Woolson made a record called the Alan Parsons Project That Never Was, releasing unpublished songs. Are there any the Hipgnosis cover that never was?
Yes, there are many Hipgnosis covers that never was, and I have actually got a portfolio of illustrations and sketches, a lot of them, which never made it to be a record cover. And one of the most famous ones of those is the cover I did for Animals for Pink Floyd. The cover for Animals for Pink Floyd, as you probably know, is a power station with a pig flying over the top of between two chimneys. The original design for that was a small boy with a teddy bear walking into his parents' bedroom while they were making love. So it was called Animals, and that was the image. And the Pink Floyd said, not sure about a child walking into the bedroom and seeing his parents make love. Maybe that's not going to make for a good album cover. So we got rid of it. And I was very sad about that because I liked that image very much. However, in retrospect, when Roger Waters said, I want to fly a pig in front of Battersea Power Station, actually, that looks a lot better. It was a great cover. So I have a box full of drawings of covers that never got made. In fact, again, in the Hipgnosis book, there are images that I designed for bands like Queen. There's a great photograph of a guy with ping pong balls instead of his eyes and a ping pong ball in his mouth. And I designed that for a thing called Queen's Greatest Hits. But Freddie Mercury said, I don't want it. So, there's lots of interesting images like that that we designed for people that never actually made it. And we've never used them. And that's what also is interesting in Hipgnosis Portraits. There's images in there that were, ideas, if you like, that were showed to people, and maybe they didn't know what to think. I'll tell you a funny story. Is when I did an album cover for Led Zeppelin, I went to see them in Germany where they were recording in Munich. And I took a whole load of ideas and I showed them, put them all around my hotel room wall. And they came in, and Robert Plant picked up one of the ideas, and he turned it over. On the back, it said Wishbone Ash crossed out, Pink Floyd crossed out, Uriah Heep crossed out, Black Sabbath crossed out, a whole load of bands crossed out. And he said, have you showed these images to somebody else? I said, of course. A good image is a good image. If I can sell it to you or any other band, I'm happy. He was really upset about it.
Interesting. I have many questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Carry on.
Do you miss Storm?
Storm was my brother. We weren't real brothers, but he was my brother in life. And when he died last year, as my mentor, my best friend, and the person who I started the Hipgnosis Design Studio with, it was a terrible loss. We hadn't worked together for a long time. We'd done books together and we'd done exhibitions together, but actually working together, no. We found it too difficult because we were both very aggressive and assertive personalities. And when you put Storm and me in a room together to design something or film something together, there was always sparks. And sometimes there were sparks in a good way, sometimes in a bad way. And we actually worked together last in 1982, can you believe it, a long time ago. And that was really because I wanted to go a different way from him. He wanted to carry on in doing still images, surreal images, and I wanted to be a film director and writer and producer. So we split, and we never really worked together again. And for 10 years we didn't speak to each other because he was so angry with me for breaking away. But actually we came back together, and in the last 10 years we were best friends, and so to lose him was a terrible tragedy, and also so young. He was only 68. And I feel that life is not the same without him. He inspired me. He gave me tremendous encouragement in imagery and things that I was doing, especially in film. Have a view which I respected. So the answer is yes, I missed him, and you know, he was a great designer, and it was such a privilege to work with him for as long as I did.
He's a great friend too, I know. I suppose. What do they have in common, the realization of a cover with that one of creation of a video clip? Can you explain the difference between the art of making pictures and the one of making video?
When you when you design rather an image for an album cover, first of all, when I talk about album covers, I'm talking about album covers that are this big. I'm not talking about MP3s or tiny CDs that are this big. I'm talking about real video.
12 inch.
And when you designed for that, you had to be very conscious that you were working with what I call a canvas, like a painter. So you had your parameters, which was a square. But on the other hand, Andy Warhol always painted in squares. And he has a great expression on it. He used to say, I don't paint in horizontal, I don't paint in vertical, I paint in squares because it's a much easier decision to make. And he was right. And that was one of the joys of working on an album cover in a square. So the next thing was to work with composition. So you had to think about composition of a photograph within the square that would immediately jump out and grab somebody visually and say, buy me. We never thought in terms of, let's say, you know, about how to sell the album, but we always wanted to create an image whereby it was eye-catching. You know, I can think of many covers that we did. I mean, if you take Pink Floyd again, we put an image of a cow on Atom Heart Mother. There's no lettering around it at all. And if you think of that in the period of the early 1970s, the record companies were horrified. They'd say, what's a cow got to do with Pink Floyd? Why is there no name of the group on it? Why is there no name of the record? And we knew that a picture of a cow, plain and simple, would be more eye-catching and draw more people into wonder about Pink Floyd than anything else. And it worked. It was #1 record for them in America, and everybody talked about it because it was so unique. So in a sense, doing an album cover, you have to be quite clever about doing something that you want to do, but also it's going to be something that will be attractive to other people when they see it. A music video is completely different. I got so bored with doing that by the end of the 1980s. I wanted to do film. The first place that I could possibly do it was music video. And the only way to do that was by experiment. I wasn't a filmmaker by trade, so I had to learn. But it was easy. Again, as I said before, it's who you know and not what you know. So when I wanted to start making films, I just asked all the rock stars I was working with, hey, can I do your video? Like, one of the first videos I did was Big Log. You know, I mean, it doesn't start much better than that when you get that high up in the echelon of rock stars. So it was an easy way in, if you like. And the difference between the video, of course, is moving the picture. But you've got to fill a space. It's not just an image. It's going to stand the test of time just as a photograph. You've got to fill out 4 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long the track is. And that's complicated. So I always used to write scripts for that. And try and generate not just, you know, an image of a band playing along or anything like that, but to try and put out some message with it. For example, the new video I've just made for Pink Floyd, for Louder Than Words, I went to Kazakhstan, and in Kazakhstan there's the Aral Sea, which has been dead for the last 40 years. It's completely dried up from what was an enormous inland sea to a desert. And in that desert there are rusting, old, beautiful ships, big ships. So I knew I wanted to go there, one, for the surreality of it, because it was weird looking, but two, because I give a message with the video. And the message is, don't do this. Let's not make this same mistake again. A beautiful sea with a beautiful community has been destroyed. And I see that happening in places like the Mekong Delta, the Mekong River. They're planning to dam that. Whole communities, the fishing people, will be destroyed. So it's a kind of message. So if you can succeed in not only doing something which is complementary to the music and the band, but also give a message which is a sociological or ecological or cultural message which is important, perfect. You've succeeded. A band like Pink Floyd, who are so big, so many people will watch that video that you'll get your message across. So that's the difference between doing a still picture and a moving picture for me in terms of a pop video.
You now make everything with the design, with the image. You recently worked with Monty Python. Can you please tell us more about this experience?
Yeah, I filmed Monty Python this last year. It will be their final show that they will ever put together. It was a very lavish show. And I started my relationship with Monty Python quite a long time ago. I'm very friendly with Eric Idle, who is the driving force between, I'm very friendly with Eric Idle, who I suppose is the driving force behind Monty Python in terms of doing interesting projects. He's always been that part of Monty Python. And about 6 years ago, he asked me to do a film for them which was called Not the Messiah, Who's a Naughty Boy. I shot that film, and then 2 years ago I shot another movie for him in Hollywood, which was a comedy starring Russell Brand, Eddie Izzard, Eric Idle himself, Billy Connolly, all these very famous English comedians. And it was a fantastic experience to do that with him, because he's a very funny man. But what it did, it laid the groundwork. He trusted me to help him with the script and trusted me to help him with the film, and direct the film. So it laid the groundwork for starting work on Monty Python. So when he decided with the others that he was going to put Monty Python together again, he came to me. And I was very flattered, because he could have gone to anybody in Hollywood to do that, but he came to me. And immediately I walked in the door with all of them and sat down, and they just said, welcome, we've seen what you do, you're the man to do this film. It was an absolute privilege. And in the beginning, of course, they hadn't worked together for a long time, so it was quite tense in places. You find that John Cleese has one view, but Terry Gilliam will have another. And will have one view, so they were quite tense with each other, and there were moments when I thought this might not ever happen. But then they've also got this fantastic sense of camaraderie and communion with each other in terms of humour. So when we used to have script read-throughs and stuff like that, the atmosphere was very funny, and they were very funny. And there were always ideas going back and forth. But Eric Idle was the person who was the glue who put it all together like that. And it was wonderful to work with them. I was very proud of the film. I think it's coming out about now. It's great.
40 years too, anniversary. This year you have been in charge of 2 projects with Pink Floyd. The Marooned video for the 20th anniversary of the Division Bell, and the cover of the last record, the Endless River. Do this project have a special meaning for you?
The project, the Endless River, has a very special meaning for me because, as I said earlier, Storm Thorgerson, who was my partner in hypnosis, died last year. And when he died, he asked before Pink Floyd, look, you need a creative designer again when I'm gone. And he said, I think that Aubrey Powell would be the best person to do that, because obviously I've worked at Pink Floyd for years before anyway. So I stepped in his shoes, because normally I'm directing films, I'm not being a creative. So there were big shoes to fill working Storm's place. But immediately I started work with David Gilmour and Nick Mason. We were straight on it, no question. And the first thing I did for them was I went to Chernobyl, which is in Ukraine, and shot a music video for The Room, which was an instrumental track that David Gilmour had done on the Division by Army. It was a very surreal film, obviously. It was a surreal place to go, and a dangerous place to go. But we made an interesting film for that, and that immediately established a very good relationship between David Gilmour and me. Not that we've been friends for the last 45 years, but, you know, in a working relationship. So then came along the Endless River, which was first of all called Louder Than Words, then it was called The Big Split, and then it was called, well, it had any number of names before it became the Endless River. And one of the first things we had to do was to do the album cover for it. Well, I decided that I was not the person to design the album cover. I'd been too close to Pink Floyd with everything in Hipgnosis, and we looked at some of Storm's ideas that he'd left behind when he died, and there was nothing really suitable there. So I decided to ask about 20 different people to submit ideas, and some of those people were very famous, like Damien Hirst, the well-known Britpop artist. He did a very interesting design, which was the blood which runs through the body. It's an endless river, which I thought was a fantastic idea, but this wasn't quite Pink Floyd. Then there were other ideas from famous photographers, from design studios, from advertising. Anyway, one of them came up with this image, which I have here, which is this picture that was finished up on the Endless River as the cover. It wasn't exactly that image, but it was similar. And it was an illustration done by an Egyptian boy. And we had no idea who he was or where it was, but every time I had a meeting with David Gilmour and Nick Mason, this image kept coming in front of us, and we kept coming back to it going, you know what, that's interesting, that's interesting. Because this is the last Pink Floyd album I ever made. I can't see there being another. It just isn't enough material. Never say never, and never wrong, but I think this will be the last. And this image of a boy paddling a boat through the clouds into the sunset is very much a kind of symbolic act of Pink Floyd career, heading off into the sunset. You know, it's their autumn years. It was a very suitable image, I think. And the thing is that when this image came forward and forward and forward, we kept thinking that something else would come along, but it didn't, and we kept being drawn back to it. The only thing was, it was slightly different. The boat was different, and the man was, had his arms up in the air like this, an Egyptian dhow. And I said to David, we should change that to be more English. Anyway, I contacted the Egyptian boy, Ahmed, and he lives in a town, small town on the Syrian-Kuwaiti border. And he's a kid who just draws stuff for himself. He's got a website. He's got all kinds of sketching illustrations. He taught himself through computer lessons, you know, how to do things. So he was a bit shocked when I contacted him, and he said, I want to use your image for the new Pink Floyd cover. In fact, he was stunned, you know, he was so surprised. And he said, oh, you know, he didn't believe it at first, I don't think. Anyway, we bought the rights to the image from him, and he was doubly pleased about that. But, and then I took it into a photographic studio, and I changed it to be how I wanted it. And I used a Thames rowing boat, the sort of boat you get on the River Thames in London. and I also changed it to the boy hunting the boat forward, and make it more English in that sense. And for me to have created the last Pink Floyd album cover as such was an absolute privilege, and I feel very humble at having been asked. It feels like I've done full circle. I've gone right from the beginning right round to the end. So it's a very good feeling, and I'm very proud of the cover. I'm very pleased with it.
Very, very special for us too, because something it's dedicated to Richard Wright, and the image you create, we think it's Richard, no? There.
Several people have asked me, is this Richard Wright? Is this an imagery of Richard Wright going off into the sunset? And truly it's not. This album is dedicated to Richard Wright, the keyboard player with Pink Floyd, and with good reason, because there's a lot of his playing all over the album. And he was really an unsung genius in many respects. He was always the one, Pink Floyd, who was slightly detached, slightly outside, slightly more shy. He wasn't the person to push himself forward. But actually, in the Pink Floyd sound, he played a huge part, especially in the beginning. And he's very prevalent all over this latest album, The English River. So, when he died, David and Nick both wanted to dedicate this album, in a sense, to his contribution to Pink Floyd, and I think that's absolutely right. Actually, the cover is not about it. The cover is really about the end of Pink Floyd.
Very good job. The next question are about this. Ahmed is a digital artist. He's very young. He's a teenager, 18, and he's Egyptian. I need to make three questions. One is what has changed and what has remained the same with the advent of digital technology. You speak about this before. What should a young man inspired by your work to do? And can we talk about a new, truly global market for digital arts?
Okay, first of all, let me talk about digital technology. Digital technology, for me, is a magic word. And I never had the opportunity to work with that world when I was young. Because when Hipgnosis started in 1967, the digital world was not even invented or thought about. So when we did photographs, it was with film, SLR cameras, you know, Hasselblads with backs that you had to load up and put on, lenses, you know. It was a complicated process, and then they had to go to be processed in a laboratory or blown up in a darkroom into a photographic print. It was something that was time-consuming, but at the same time taught me a huge amount. It taught me about patience, and it taught me about composition. Because unlike today with a digital camera, you could run off 1,000 images on one picture. You couldn't do that then. Film was expensive. So if you had a picture to do, you'd probably only shoot 20 frames, maybe 30 max. And then you'd have to be very, very careful in your choice of composition and how it looked and focus and everything else. And lighting. You have far more opportunity now with digital work. The other thing, of course, is that Hipgnosis was famous for its montage work, where we used to put one photograph on top of another, and we would have everything in focus, which is, of course, impossible, because the human eye, if it's looking at something in the foreground, the background is out of focus, and vice versa. So we used to create surreal imagery by having everything sharp. So I would have my hand here would be sharp focus, My computer would be sharp focused. So everything would be absolutely a sort of hyper-realistic image. It was our signature, if you like. It was our style. But all of that had to be done by cutting out with scissors or blades and rubbing edges down and sanding images very flat so they stuck down very flat and using glue. And I mean, very, very basic art school stuff, you know, the sort of thing you would do if you were in college. And that's how we worked. For 15 years, we worked like that. And we had a studio that was in the centre of Soho in London. It was an absolute mess, I cannot tell you. It's amazing anything came out of that studio at all. But it was very much what I would call an art house. They always talk about Andy Warhol's factory. Well, Hipgnosis was like that. We were like a factory. A lot of people worked there. Storm and I were the photographer and designer, along with Peter Christopherson, who joined later. And the other people who worked with us, everybody contributed. Somebody would come up with an idea for this, somebody would have a thought about that, why don't we do it this way? Everybody was welcome to work with us. It was not something where, you know, we dictated exactly what had to happen, but at the same time we designed it and moved forward. In terms of everything else, the graphics and how it should be put together, we often relied on other people to do that for us. I mean, I was no good at drawing, I couldn't do illustration, I couldn't do lettering, so I had to bring in people like George Hardy to work with me to do the lettering for us. But in the digital world, if I wanted to recreate the imagery of Hipgnosis, what joy with Photoshop and all the other toys at your disposal. You take various pictures and you just join them together and you blow them up and you just knock out the pixels and retouch and you've got your image. And photographs that would sometimes take me 3 weeks to put together. After I showed it, in the 1970s, I could do in 3 hours now. So it's a very good medium to do. The only thing that I would criticize it for, that applies to a lot of designing in this day and age, is the speed at which people expect things to be done. So because you can shoot something quickly, and because you can blow it up quickly, and you touch it quickly, people want it now. And the disadvantage of that is it doesn't give you time to reflect and think about which is the best image, which is the very best image, which is the best image. That takes time. You need to cogitate, you need to digest and think about these things for a few days or a couple of weeks, or work out what really, stick it on the wall and live with it, and decide what is the best image. That doesn't happen yet. As soon as the picture's done, bang, somebody needs it now. And that is the digital world, and that, I think, is a disadvantage of the digital world. You asked me also about what would I say to any young person who's coming into this business? Well, first of all, it's different. Because when I was young and doing album covers, as I said to you before, they were big. So it was a great canvas to work on. Nowadays, it's tiny. It's the size of a book cover. And that's not such an interesting format to work with. However, the main thing is the design. Good design is a good design is a good design. I cannot say more than that. So anybody who's young, who's entering into the photography or design world and wants to make it, it's got to be different and it's got to be good. And it's got to be sufficiently different that people take notice of it. And that's the real thing. You need to go against the grain. So many people I see in art school are always trying to copy or emulate other people who've gone before them. Nothing is new in this world. It's true. Nothing. But it's how you approach it and how you do it that makes a difference. So most young people, sometimes I give lectures in art colleges or schools or whatever, and I always say to them, of course I've had tremendous success and I'm very fortunate, but it might as well be you. and it can be you, because somebody has to do something new, somebody has to do something different, somebody has to be creative in a different way that grabs people's attention. And it's a lot to do with timing too, you know, right time, right place. And of course, the other thing which I'm always saying is who you know. Cultivate relationships. That old expression, networking, you can't get enough of it. You need to know people to get on and do these things. Of course, the young Egyptian boy who designed the Endless River initial artwork, he didn't know anybody, but he does now. And after this extraordinary situation with him designing the new Pink Floyd album cover, I'm sure his success is going to grow and grow. So those are my sort of parameters about, you know, or advice to young people about how to get along. It's a difficult world, the world of graphics and photography. Everybody has a camera now. Everybody can do it. But not everybody can do it, because some photographers and designers are way beyond what an average person can do in their creative mind. And that's what one looks for. One looks for those people.
Because there are good picture and bad picture.
Yeah, it's you know when you see a picture and it's good. It just is, you know. And there's some, you know, in this day and age, I look at some of these CD covers that are out there, because of course they're small now, and some of them are very exciting and very interesting. And there are some very good designers out there. But of course, sadly, their canvas is very small, so it doesn't get the kind of exposure that we used to have. Also, in the days of album covers, way back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was no MTV, there was no VH1, there was no you know, way of seeing what a band looked like live. There were very few films of bands. There was the only information you could get about a band was through some musical paper, you know. So the album cover often used to represent the band. The style of Pink Floyd album covers was always a surreal style, and that in itself lent to the image of Pink Floyd. And this was very important. People would get an album cover, open it out, they'd read the lyrics, they'd look at the poster inside, they'd get some stickers with it, they'd have all sorts of things, and this would be a big event to put that on. And also, people used to have shelves and shelves and shelves of these big records everywhere. And when you walked into somebody's house, that was a symbol of how they were. It was part of them. Oh, you've got a big album collection. It was like, it said something about them. And maybe they'd have an album cover on show, which would be the latest album they were listening to. You don't have any of that. So it's a very different cultural world in the sense of what is a priority. There's no downloading. You know, nowadays people can download it. Songs, they don't need a picture to go with it. But I think the two things are joined together at the hip, music and vision. So I think there will always be a place for visual imagery.
The last three questions.
Okay?
Apart from the cover of More, generated by the frame of the film, are there other cover made or inspired by Ibiza or Formentera?
I shot the Pink Floyd cover for the More film soundtrack in Formentera at the windmill, which is very near to San Francisco. And Formentera has been the catalyst for me for many images. I've also shot music videos there. I shot a music video for a heavy rock band called Magnum there once. But the most important thing about Formentera for me is the light and the sea. And if you look at a lot of Hipgnosis images, there's always an amazing blue sky. Or even if you look at the new Pink Floyd video for Louder Than Words, which I shot in Kazakhstan, you'll see this amazing desert with this incredible blue sky and extraordinary cloud formations. And this has all come from the inspiration that I've received from Formentera. For being there for 30 years, it has given me a huge insight into what great light is and what interesting landscapes are. And so I would say that the Balearic Isles has worked as an inspiration for me, creatively. Not necessarily that I would have shot many photographs there or shot many films there, but creatively it's absolutely in my source, my energy platform. That's where I re-energize to get ideas and sketch and do. I don't think I'm alone with this. I mean, one of my neighbors is Philippe Stark, the incredible furniture and designer, and Ron Arad, who also designed. Many people do. They are extraordinary.
Last, Shigu? Would you like, this is personal question.
Yes.
Would you like to collaborate in writing a novel that takes place in Ibiza, Formentera, and London, and involves you as a character?
I'm always interested in anything that's creative. I love to write, and I'm always interested in creative writing. I love London. It's the powerhouse of the world as far as I'm concerned with creative people. I love Ibiza, I love Formentera. There's a magic about those islands which I've never found anywhere else in the world. So yes, I'm always interested to collaborate and write, be involved in some creative collaboration about anything really. So the answer to that is yes. I mean, one of the things about, I think that when you work in the world that I've had the privilege to work in film and in photography and with rock and roll stars, it all involves travel. It's always travel. It doesn't matter whether you're on a private jet with Led Zeppelin or whether you're, tramping across the desert somewhere to get a photograph. It's always traveling. And that's one of the great things. Nothing stays the same. Nothing remains the same. It's a different job each day. It's a different challenge each day. Sometimes it's luxury, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's difficult, sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's raining, sometimes it's sunny. And all these stories, which are particularly in my new Hipgnosis book, the Portraits book, they're all narratives about the creative experience. They really are. They're all stories surrounding the creative experience. And I think that gives you a huge amount of life lessons and interest that enables you to create film or write books or whatever to go on. And that's why I never see my career finishing. My career will go on till the day I hang my boots up. It's always there in some form or other.
Next time when you come back, I want to explain this idea.
Okay.
The last question is something easy or something, because I know that your career is, the music is still the basis of most of your career.
Mm-hmm.
And you think there may be a world without music?
Nearly all my career has been music-based. I've worked for a tremendous amount of rock stars and musicians, and it's been a fantastic experience to work with them. And without them, I would have not have had the opportunities to create the kind of album covers and designs that I wanted to make. I don't think there will ever be a world without music. I don't see how there can be. Music is something which is... I mean, I was looking at this little space probe that's landed on a comet that's flying through space right now. I don't know if you saw that the other day. And this little space probe when it landed on the comet, it emitted a sound, and it was the sound emanating from inside the comet. And it was a musical kind of sound, you know, it was a repeated rhythm that was fascinating, and scientists were noting it. And I just thought, you know, even at the very basis of life on Earth, which they suppose these ice-formed comets might be, there's sound, there's rhythm. And I think it's inherent in everybody, and there will always be music. I can't ever see a world without music. Could I see a world with music but no visuals to music? No, I can't see that either. Because where you have music, you have dance. Where you have dance, you have people. Where you have people, there's energy. Where you have energy, there's light. It's just a whole mishmash together. And I think the synchronicity between music and creative visuals will always be there, forever and ever.
Really, thank you very much for your time.
Is that good, Christian? Did it sound okay, the thing? I mean, is the quality of the sound of the photograph picture okay?
This is something good. I think. I think. Can you? We can talk together another time. And before to put, I make a cut from this interview because
okay. And what will you put it on the day? Will it go on the website for a day and night?
Yeah, we can put it there in the new website and in our
magazine.
In our magazine and in our YouTube channel.
Do you need any photographs of any of the album covers and stuff like that?
Yes.
Do you need any high-res images?
Yes, send me everything with talk, for example.
Okay. I will send you on your email on Monday or Tuesday. I will send you some high-resolution images from Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, Monty Python, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Would that be good?
One photograph from the video of.
Yes. Okay.
Because it's
I'll
something.
send you a picture of me.
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
I expect that at some point on say Tuesday you will receive some high-res, maybe 12 high-res images or something.
Okay, we are waiting for.
Okay.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
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 Bye.